Good morning, everybody. So I'm sure that some of you can absolutely kind of pick through the triangle congruence proofs and you don't need a lot of explanation. Again, we got answers off to the side so that you can check your work. But for those of you that might appreciate just kind of hearing my thought process, I'm going to talk through a couple examples just so you've got it. So this first guy up here, again, we always start with the given. So BD is going to bisect angle ABC. Now, if it bisects an angle, then it should create two equal angles. So we're going to be real careful that whenever you see that word bisect, that we're paying attention to whether it bisected a segment, whether it bisected an angle. Like, we're just going to be real careful with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that notation on my picture that those two angles are going to be the same. Now I'm also noticing in my proof, all of my symbols are congruent. So I'm going to talk about the angles as opposed to the measure of the angles, right? I don't want to flip-flop back and forth, or I'm going to have to add a step to talk about that definition of congruence. So we're going to say that the angle ABD is congruent to angle. Now again, if I started over here with A, then I'm going to want to start with C on the other side. So CBD. And again, that one's definition of bisector. Oh, let's go ahead and put the given up here. Okay, and with that, I've exhausted everything that kind of goes with that idea of bisector. And so then we're going to go ahead and move on to that next little piece. Okay, so as we see, step number 3 is given. And again, it's not that I can't put a given, like all the givens together. It's just particularly in ALEKS, it wants you to exhaust everything about the given before moving on to another part. All right, so the next thing I know is that angle BDA is going to be congruent to angle BDC. All right, so B to D to A would be right here, and B to D to C would be here. All right, so again, that was given. And again, there's nothing else to do with that one, right? That was given, it's just one thing, we're done. Next part, B to D is congruent to B to D. And again, I'm just noticing up here, BD in this first triangle goes from the second to the third position. Second and third position in the other triangle, it's the same order, and that's why those are going to be the same. So again, when we have an overlapping piece, okay, we call that, or we define that with the reflexive property. Okay, and then our last piece, again, the prove, let me switch colors one more time, the prove always is in your last column. All right, and this time triangle ABD is supposed to be congruent to triangle CBD. Now again, when we get to that last step, it has to be one of those 5 things, right? So it's got to be the side, 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 angle, side, angle, angle, side, angle, or hypotenuse leg. Okay, so as we're looking up here, again, I pick one of my triangles. If I start with the 2, that's an angle, right? And then I'm going to travel this direction because that's where all my notation is, right? So I'm going to go angle to side to angle, and then I just double check and make sure on the other triangle that I do the same thing. I go from angle to side to angle, and so that's going to be my reasoning. Okay, angle, side, angle. Okay, now as I look at the second one, okay, I'm noticing in my given this time that the first thing it tells me is that segment ST is parallel to segment UV. So again, we're going to be real careful with our notation. Parallel does not tell me that they are the same size. What it does create, however, are some of those angles. Okay, so again, if I just kind of extend the lines a little bit so we can see, okay, I'm noticing down here, like if I look just a little bit further in the proof, they've got a T and a U. Well, here's T and U, so I'm going to go ahead and put the transversal so that it cuts those 2 particular angles. All right, and again, I knew to do that just because I was looking in the proof, and that's what they had. So we're going to come back to that here in just a little bit. Let's look at this first piece. So S to T is going to be congruent to U to V. So ST and UV. Now again, I know that because they told me it, not because it was parallel. All right, so if they had not given you that second piece of information, we wouldn't know that those were going to be congruent. All right, so there's given on that one. And again, side lengths, that's kind of a one and done. All right, so this next piece, if ST is going to be parallel, again, that's also given, but parallel lines give us all of those angle relationships. So if you look back on that worksheet that we had, that was 350, I believe, and it had all the triangle relationships on it, and it had the parallel line stuff. So again, if you're feeling a little confused on that, go back and look at it. But remember that if I have 2 parallel lines and I cut them with a transversal, okay, here we go, there's T and U right there. Now these angles are inside, and when I say inside, I just mean like if I cover up here, they're in between those lines, and they're on different sides, alternate sides of the transversal. So T is going to be congruent to U, and that's going to be an alternate interior angles. Okay, and we know that those are going to be congruent. All right, now there are several different ways that the proof could develop at this point. They could have talked about another transversal, right? We could have gotten angles here. Now again, I would only know which way to go with the proof if they had something filled in, okay? So oftentimes there's more than one way to do it, but particularly on things that are gonna be graded electronically, they have to scaffold it so that they can get the answers right. So if I'm looking for verticals, right, vertical angles have to be across from each other. I'm gonna go ahead and use a single notation here. Now, I cannot just name these. I could use single letters here because there was only one angle possible at T, okay? That would be less than that 180. So if I look at this, I've got to name these correctly. Again, I'm going to use congruent symbols, okay? So I'm not going to talk about the measure. I'm just going to talk about the angle. So angle, I'm going to choose to go S to W to T. So SWT is going to be congruent to angle. And then if I notice, S should line up with V. Okay, W should go to W, and then T, right, T should line up with that U. So angle, SWT, should be congruent to angle, VWU. And again, those are vertical. Again, there were a couple ways to do this proof, but that's what we chose, so that's what we're going to go with. So again, my proof statement, whether they fill it in or not, it always goes in number 5. So if they didn't fill it in, you want to go ahead and do that. And again, if I'm talking about triangle, congruent to triangle, then I'm looking for one of those 5. So again, if I go back up here and I just kind of pick one of them, right? I've got an angle, angle, and then a side. Okay, so again, for this one, I'm going to choose to travel in this direction, right? Angle, I can skip one thing, so I skip the side, there's a second angle, and then I immediately touch a side next to it. And if I look at my other triangle, again, I would travel this direction, angle to side. And that would be my reasoning. All right, so I'm going to do one more, and then I think you guys will probably have the handle of it at this point because we would have hit the big ones. All right, so on number 3 yet. All right, so we've got that AB is congruent to DE. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on here. So AB congruent to DE. And we're going to tell you that AB, again, I just extend my lines a little bit just so I can see the transversals a little easier. Okay, I know that those are going to be parallel. All right, so that's going to be a given. Okay, so when I look down at the next step, it's talking about angle D and angle B. So D is down here and B is up here. So the transversal that we're interested in is going to have to touch those two angles. All right, so we're saying that this one is the same as this one. Now again, with parallel lines, right, I've got several sets of angles, but only a couple of those guys are going to be congruent. And so on this one, again, they're inside the lines, right? If I cover that up, they are in between the lines, and they are on different sides of the transversal. So once again, I've got alternate interior angles, okay, and alternate interior angles are congruent. So we're going to state what we know about those guys. Okay, so again, we've got a lot of different ways that we could go on this particular problem, but I'm noticing that what they filled in, what they want us to do next is vertical. So again, my vertical angles come from an X. So you've got a vertical angle here. Now again, I've got 4 possibilities for an angle C, so I cannot use just one letter. I'm also noticing I'm not going to talk about the measure. I'm not going to use an equal sign. Okay, it needs to be congruent. So again, we'll say angle. I'm going to choose to go A, C, B. The first one that you write, right, so this first guy here, it doesn't matter the order on the first one. What does matter is when you write the second angle that it matches up appropriately. Okay, so again, if I start with angle A, as I look here, A should match up with E. Okay, C should match up with C, and B should match up with D. So we're just making sure that we have those letters in order. Now again, it might be different on our answer key, but you're just making sure that whatever you chose for that first one matches up with that second one. Okay, so vertical was kind of one and done as well. Then we have the second part, that C is the midpoint of A to E. So again, that piece of information was given. But if C is a midpoint, okay, again, segment A to E, so here's A to E, so I would know that this side is equal to that side. And again, I'm just going to use the 2 tick marks because I already have a single for those originals. All right, so by a midpoint, I would know that AC, okay, and again, I'm going to be with my segment notation, and I'm going to use a congruent sign because I don't want to flip back and forth between congruent and equals. Otherwise, I have to flip-flop. I have to put a definition of congruence in there. All right, so A to C should be the same as, so again, here's A to C. That should be the same as E to C. And the vocabulary word, so again, if I look in front of it, the vocabulary word I used was midpoint. So we're going to have definition of midpoint. And then our last step, okay, so triangle ABC, again, if they hadn't given that to you, right, the last step is always going to be whatever they wrote for proof. And if it's triangle congruent to triangle, it's one of our 5. So again, if I go back up here and look, all right, I'm seeing I've got an angle here. Now again, I'm not going to travel this direction. Oh, no, wait, I could. Sorry. Angle to angle. I just can't even see all my sides here. Looks like we've got an angle to a side, or, oh, I couldn't go this way because look, I would have angle side, and that's not going to be enough. So we're going to have to go this direction. And so again, here's angle to side. Okay, so once again, just kind of as I'm thinking out loud as we're doing it here, the reason I could not go the other direction, right, I would have angle, and then I press side, and then I would hit a side and another side. And remember that that is not something, right, we can't have that, right, that one doesn't work. The only time this happens is if I have a right triangle, and it would have to be hypotenuse leg. So on this particular set, even though I have the notation for it, right, I need to go the other way and pick one of our congruence postulates that actually works. Okay, so at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I think you can probably finish. Okay, so go ahead and knock out the rest of them. Again, you've got answers over to the side, so you can check major ideas. Make sure you're watching your notation, you're watching the order of your letters. Okay, and then just, I think you're going to be okay at that point. You've also got a quizzes, so go ahead and knock that out for me as well. It will be a formative grade. You can do it as many times as you want. Hopefully you're going to knock that out in class, but I'll keep it open until Sunday at midnight in case you want to do it over the weekend. All right, have a great day, have a good weekend, and I'll hopefully see you on Monday. Thanks, guys. Bye.